How about one of the best sleeper teams in 2022, those Jacksonville Jaguars? If you're watching on YouTube, you can see our guest today, Tony Wiggins, the host of Locked On Jaguars, on the screen with us. Let's get into Jacksonville coming up and the AFC South. It's an interesting division and winnable, by the way, right now.
You're listening to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, your daily podcast on the National Football League, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you as usual at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL, and our esteemed guest, the host of Locked On Jaguars, Tony Wiggins at Shop Talkin' Wig on Twitter. Tony, it's a pleasure chatting with you. It's been an interesting 18 months or so with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but suddenly a young star quarterback, a respected head coach, maybe a little stability for once in Jacksonville, huh?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It is stable, but you said, funny 18 months. It's almost been a funny 18 years around here, really, when you think about it. So, you guys, it was almost like what you guys saw over the last 18 months was, it's like somebody has a bunch of roaches in their house and they don't come out unless the lights come on. Well, it got so bad that they came out in broad daylight. You know what I'm saying? It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon and y'all were over and they were just walking across the floor. It was just that infested. But now you're right. Doug Peterson does bring the championship pedigree with him. And he's done some really nice things that I really like so far in camp.
Yeah. I mean, along those lines, Tony, I'm sure our listeners I know you know this, but one winning season in the last 14 years, 15-50 over the last 4 seasons combined. So my question to you, what is a successful season for the Jacksonville Jaguars? I mean, their version of a successful season is different than the Rams or the Packers or somebody that's at the top of the league right now. And one thing I think they could start with just to get closer to respectability is little things like, their special teams were horrible last year. Get the middle of the road there. Their turnover differential was -20, far and away the worst in the league. If they're just average in those two categories, that steps in the right direction.
You're right. So I'm glad you phrased it that way or framed it that way, because usually when people say what would signal success, everyone wants to throw a record at it. I don't throw a record at him. I throw a feeling at him. The feeling that we have here is there doesn't have to be this 2017 Jaguar uprising. It has to feel more like something's just, you know how something is when it's headed in the right direction.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I don't think the team should be playing for baby steps, because if you're a player and a coach, I guess you go out and try to win every single moment of every single day and then take inventory at the end of the day to see if you won or not. But for the fans, you just want to know that every single week when you come to the stadium, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that outcome has been negative for so long. Everyone knew what was going to happen. And usually by week 7 or week 8, we're talking about the draft around here. I want that to change. And if that changes, when they're starting to focus on the lineup and they're looking at the backup guard to see if he's a future player, or is this guy going to be able to play a little nickel? Hey, put that kid in that we drafted last year in the 7th round and let's see what he has. That's because you're actually building and you wanting something to be successful, as opposed to hoping and wishing that it is successful.
Well said.
Where is Trevor Lawrence in his development curve? And did you see stuff from his rookie season, as rocky as the year was, and with everything going on with the coaching staff? And there was a lot for a rookie quarterback to deal with, and it's already so difficult for a rookie quarterback jumping into the NFL and has to be the franchise face from day one. What did you see from Trevor Lawrence as a rookie, and what do you expect to see from him in year 2?
Well, he learned who he was and what he's supposed to be. And by that, I mean this. There was a point where he was basically like Ari Fleischer. He was a press secretary. And it was about non-football stuff. It was anytime the natives got restless, just stick the guy out there that you know that everyone likes. And at some point, he kind of seemed like he got tired of it. And what that means is he understands his place. Remember the RG3 thing where RG3 apparently allegedly was talking to the owner, when that you don't want to be the company guy. I'm sorry. I want my middle child to not tell on the other 4 kids. I want them all to get in the huddle and say, look, we've got to stick together because if one of us gets in trouble, all of it. I want my quarterback to just be a 21, 22-year-old kid who just became a millionaire, who loves his teammates. They just want to win. I don't want him out here sounding like a 50-year-old man. And that's what it was. So I think he realizes who he was. And on the field, it kind of reminded me, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, 1989, it reminded me of Troy Aikman when he was taking that whooping every single week. But you notice he kept standing up. He wasn't broken. You know what I'm saying? And Trevor is not broken. In fact, he was probably trying to do a little bit too much late in some of these games that they probably could have had a chance to win had he not felt like he had to put the entire franchise on his back. So from a confidence standpoint, I am as giddy as I could be because he will not go through anything as bad as he's ever gone through this past season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even throw rookie year Peyton Manning in that mix, like you mentioned Aikman, I mean, just too much asked of a first overall pick. And if Trevor Lawrence were a stock, I would put a lot of my not so vast fortunes on him right now because I know that stock is going up. And you mentioned about what he had to do off the field. I went back and watched a lot of Lawrence tape, coaches tape recently during the offseason. He had wide receivers running into each other, in the spot, not running the right routes. No one's even getting open when they do have the right routes. Like, he had to be the adult on the field, and that's wrong too. Like, he's a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, you're right. And there was a whole reel that lasted like 2 minutes on Twitter of drop balls.
Yeah,
and it seemed like all the drop balls were balls that were either in the end zone, beyond the first down marker, or ones that really switched field position where guys could have kept running for. So it's like he just they were not good enough for this team to have any of those things happen. And every single Murphy's Law, every single thing that could go wrong actually did go wrong. Now I'm enthusiastic about this year. One, because Doug Peterson is a quarterback. Okay. And not only did he bring Press Taylor, he got Mike McCoy, who's a former head coach, who, he's a quarterback trainer. And then, he also, between Press Taylor, Jim Bob Cooter, they brought him in. They're insulating him now. And what I mean by that is they're doing this. The fans can be in love with Trevor. They have to hard coach him. They have to press him. Mm-hmm. They have to get him in. It's about muscle memory. It's about accountability, and he's game for it. But one of Harrison, who does Locked on Bucks, he used to train dogs in the military. And I used the example of a Belgian Malinois. When you have a Belgian Malinois or a Presa Canaria or a Cane Corso, you don't buy those dogs and just have them laying around the house. You have to actually go outside and work them for 2 hours. If not, they will tear your house apart. And I think ultra competitive athletes like Trevor Lawrence, you got to press them. You got to work them. You got to push them because that's the only way they get better. And if you don't do it, they're going to turn around and look at you like you crazy.
I like that. That's fantastic. Military dogs is a reference we have not used yet here on the Peacock and Williamson.
Oh, don't worry. I got 6 more of them. Don't worry. Before y'all get
Well, we got a little bit more time to get to the rest of those with Tony Wiggins, host of Locked On Jaguars. I want to ask about the rest of the weapons around Trevor Lawrence, the defensive side of the ball. Talk a little bit about the AFC South as well. But first, we got to let the folks out there know about Built Bars and the coconut brownie chunk puff bar from the people who invented healthy and tasty. The protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Built Bar has the latest gift for your taste buds. We're talking about the coconut brownie chunk bar. And guess what? Your friends at Built have given coconut brownie chunk the puffs treatment as well. So they got the traditional style protein coconut brownie chunk and the coconut brownie chunk puff as well. Whether you're a fan of the puffs or a fan of the original bars, I like the originals more, but a lot of my friends like those puffs a little bit more if you like those marshmallowy goodness. But either way, you can get the coconut brownie chunk chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate, like fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. That's what we're talking about here. But Built Bar makes not only good tasting bars, but they are healthy for you. And that's why you feel good about reaching for those Built Bars. They're low in calorie, low in sugar, but high in protein. We're talking about 150 calories in these Built Bars, but 17 grams of carbs. I mean, 17 grams, not 17 grams of carbs, only 4 grams of net carbs, 17 grams of protein, and only 150 calories, only, 6 grams of sugar. That's what we're talking about. That is the combination you want. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, but all deliciousness when it comes to Built Bars. And you can find that coconut brownie chunk Built Bar or any of the flavors at Built, or get a mixed box at built.com right now and get 15% off. All you got to do, go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out everything the Locked On NFL channel has to offer. It is the home of Peacock and Williamson, by the way, on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. You can see Wig with James Rapine on Wednesdays, right, Wig, on the Locked On NFL podcast as well. So you got to check all of that stuff out that the network has to offer. And, of course, your team is covered right here. Let's talk a little bit more Jaguars here. One of the things that, obviously culture is key. You get a better coaching staff in that is ready to coach NFL players and coach an NFL offense. But then, and some folks don't like the amount of money and where the money was necessarily spent by the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you had to surround your quarterback with talent on the offensive line and at wide receiver. And I don't know if Christian Kirk probably won't see the end of his contract that is no doubt backloaded, even though, so I don't think, people make fun of the Christian Kirk contract. You're not going to talk Devontae Adams into coming to Jacksonville, right? So you got to find somebody. So they had to spend some money on Christian Kirk, and he won't see the end of his deal, but you got to find some talent for your young quarterback. So I think that's key as well. How would you grade that talent around Trevor Lawrence on offense this year, Wig?
Well, Williamson mentioned it. Guys couldn't get open.
Yeah.
You won't say that about Christian Kirk. He'll get open. Whether he's a number 1A, number 2, whatever, the dude was one catch away from having 1,000 yards last year on a playoff team. The Zay Jones choice was the signing was a little bit of a head scratcher. It's like 4 years for $30 million. And then I looked today and he had 500 yards receiving with 1 touchdown last year. So I try not to get caught so much up in the numbers as I do responsibility that those guys will have. You can't manufacture a number 1 receiver, okay? And most of the time when we look at the guys that are number 1s and now, when they were drafted, they weren't. Maybe the 2 best number 1s in the league right now are Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams. Neither one of them was a first-round pick. So while you can't manufacture it, you can hope for it with guys that you pick up in the draft or that you develop. But in the meanwhile, you have this asset like Trevor Lawrence. You need NFL pass catchers. And if you have to overpay, you overpay. They structured the contract of Christian Kirk. He'll get like $36 million in 2 years. And then the third year, maybe he doesn't see the money or maybe he reworks the deal. And it's going to come around to him averaging about $17 million a year. That's almost Robert Woods' money in a different type of, atmosphere and creation. They do believe his best football is ahead of him. And I believe with increased opportunities, people might be right. Statistically, while it might not back up what they're trying to do, when you look at the way Doug Peterson ran his offense, when they scored 40-some-odd points against the greatest coach of all time in the Super Bowl, they were just using guys all over the place. It was everybody. It was Alshon Jeffrey for this. It was Nelson Aguilar for that. And it was 3 different running backs. And, of course, they lined up Zach Ertz out wide. It starts making sense when you think about Evan Ingram lining up out wide. It starts to make sense to you when you think about Zay Jones and what they're going to do with Marvin Jones and how they're going to play Christian Kirk. So I think it'll be more of a committee type deal and give Trevor a lot of options, including Travis Etienne along with James Robinson in the back, as opposed to it being your standard, okay, this is our 1, this is our 2, this is our tight end, this is our blocking tight end, this is our – I just think they're going against the grain, and what they're doing is they're just doing it differently, and they're doing it the way that they have to do it instead of that cookie cutter offensive setup.
You briefly mentioned Ingram and Etienne. We've been talking fantasy here a little bit. ATN's going to be on all my teams. I mean, I think he's going to catch a ton of passes. He was a big thing missing last year. And I think Ingram's worth the shot. You know, I mean, former first-round pick, tons of ability at that crossroads of his career where he's probably looked himself in the mirror like, this isn't my last chance, but it's pretty darn close. I mean, I think those are two wild cards that I'm excited about.
I'm excited about him too, and for the reasons that you mentioned. Before they signed Evan, they really didn't have a red zone target. That's not a problem now. When you have a young quarterback, he needs a buddy. He needs somebody in basketball. When I played basketball, when they used to have two big men, when the big man got the ball, the coach always told him, look for your buddy in the high post or slashing down the middle. So every quarterback needs that guy that hot guy comes off, he's automatically think, okay, there's my guy. And I think that's what Evan Ingram can do. I'm with you on Travis Etienne. I've been to the OTAs. Let me tell you, that dude has the bounce of a reindeer, bro. And he really, I thought back to Andy Reid and I thought back to Coach Peterson. And the guy that he reminds me of with that pep in the step is Bryant Westbrook. That's what he looked like in person. Kind of thick leg, not real tall, but he is the type of dude that when he gets it in the flat, it just seems like there's an extra gear and he has a little bit extra bounce in the step.
Yeah, people forgetting about Travis Etienne. I'm excited to see what he looks like there in the offense in 2022. But, Trevor Lawrence getting all the headlines. But to me, Wig, when I look at this roster, obviously a couple of first-round picks spent on the defense, Travon Walker, Devin Lloyd at linebacker later in round one. It's how the defense goes is how this team is going to go. And that's sort of what they're counting on is for the defense to be good, give the ball back to that offense and Trevor Lawrence more than they did before and allow them to work. So is the defense the key to the Jacksonville Jaguars keeping their head above water in 2022?
They are. And Mike Caldwell, the defensive coordinator, who was the linebackers coach in Tampa, and we all assume that that's the sort of system that he's going to bring. The thing that they've done, though, is they've changed the dynamic of their defense. If you go back to 2017, when they had Telvin Smith, who was 215 pounds, soaking wet, when they had Yannick Ngakoue and Dante Fowler, Yannick goes about 240, Dante goes maybe 255. They did have some size with Darius as well as Calais Campbell and Malik Jackson, but for the most part, they used the typical 4-3 alignment with the little fast weak side linebackers, more or less going to a 4-2-5 about 70% of the time with sort of a box safety / nickel guy. Their dynamic of their team is different now. When you see them, they are big. I'm going to give you a reason why. When they drafted Devin Lloyd, he's 6'3", 235 pounds with a lot of range at inside or whatever you want to call it, whether they call it inside or Mike linebacker. They got Foye Oluokun, who was about 6'2", 240 pounds. Their edge rushers who are listed at linebackers, it's Josh Allen at 6'4", 265, and Travon Walker at 6'5", 272. This is a big team who did not sacrifice speed to get big. A lot of times these teams get bigger and they sort of lumber around. Not them. Travon Walker, it's a shame how he looked at. I kept looking like there's no way he's 6'5", 272 until I go stand next to him. And he's just this quiet, cool country guy. Might not be as twitchy as this guy that I'm going to name, but I'm going to tell you the guy that just looking at his stature and his demeanor, he carried himself like John Abraham. And John Abraham isn't in the Hall of Fame, but you ask anybody from that era who John Abraham was, and they'll tell you in a minute that dude was a ball player.
One more front seven guy I'd have to throw out there because I hadn't thought about the transformation of little and fast to big and fast. I mean, first of all, Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry are in your division. So this comes into play when you're team building your front seven as well. They're the best two teams in the division. But what my favorite signing for the Jags was Fukasi, the defensive tackle, nose tackle type. He's a really good player in the prime of his career.
At what? Another guy, 6'4", 320. And I thought, okay, pure nose. And they were like, yeah, but if we go to four-man front, he can slide over and do a little bit more. Now, watch this. Third-year player right next to him is Devon Hamilton, who's 6'4", 330. Mm-hmm. So he's another athletic guy who, when he got here, I thought he was a pure nose. And he's chasing the quarterback around. So Roy Robinson Harris is 6'6", 285, 290. They are a big, long basketball team. And when you look at their corners and Shaq Griffin at 6'2", and Tyson Campbell is at 6'2", their secondary is going to sort of look like Baltimore, and now the guys up front, they'll look sort of like Baltimore or really like Tampa. When you think about Shaq Barrett and you think about Joe Tryon, that's exactly what they're going to try to do here. It still has to work, but so far so good in the way that they look and the dynamic that Trent wanted to do, because he's a size guy. You know that he's all about how big a guy is. Both of you guys know that, right? Yeah. And he hit that dead on the head, because he came back in the third round. He got Chad Muma, who's another tall, rangy guy at linebacker. So they've gotten a lot bigger. We just hope that it all comes together real quick.
Yeah, Trent Baalke trying to put together that Aldon Smith, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman style of defense there with a 270-pound edge guy in Walker with the crazy long arms that can get you not only with athleticism, but that bull rush can go right down the middle of you. And
Arden Key, as you know, Peacock, they signed Arden Key too to be a guy who they're going to play with his hands down on the ground. He's not standing up, I'll tell you that. He's that guy with his hand down on the ground in a nickel situation. And with those two guys too, they just got all of these they got a whole basketball team lined up all the way across the board.
Yeah, if there's one thing that Trent Baalke loves, it is length, and he's going to look for that, which is one of the reasons why early on in the process, I don't sleep on Trayvon Walker as that number 1 overall pick. It's funny because a lot of people wanted to put Walker as an inside guy, and the Jaguars said, not only we're not going to put him at defensive end, we're going to put him at outside linebacker. How about that? We're going to put an LB next to his name. So that's fantastic, and they're going to stop the run on defense. They've got guys on the back end that can cover too, so if you get enough pressure, I love the direction this Jacksonville Jaguars defense is going here. While we got you here, Wig, though, we got to talk about the rest of the division. Where do you think the Jaguars are right now? And I know you didn't want to put a record next to them, but if they're a 4th place team again, if they're in the cellar, is that going to be a disappointment? Do you think they can start to make some teams like the Colts and the Titans nervous?
Well, sure, they can. There's a path here, and it's not like the AFC South is the AFC West. Because you look at the AFC West, and it's some rough terrain to get from where you want to go to where you are from right now. So the thing about this division is there's a path, because the best team in the division has an inconsistent quarterback. That's one. Two, I'm talking about Tennessee. They also, whether it be free agency or in the draft with some guys, when those guys are now supposed to be stepping into the forefront, like they're a good team when they make their pick of the Isaiah kid from Georgia, and they're a good team when they go out and sign free agents and they draft guys that end up getting arrested. So my thing is, this is the year where you're going to see the problem with the fact that they don't have those guys who they drafted, and they don't have those guys who were supposed to be in development. This is the year that you see it, and now I do believe with Henry coming off of an injury, with the letdown of last year, with everybody looking at Tannehill with the side eye, there's a little bit of a path here. The Colts are on their 3rd quarterback in 3 years, and the Jaguars actually beat them 2 years in a row, believe it or not. Beat them and kept them out of the playoffs last year. So now they're going to try Matt Ryan. And also, and this is very critical, Houston, with all of the turmoil that they went through, beat Jacksonville twice last year, but nobody thinks they're more talented. They just thought the Jaguars were poorly coached. There's a path here, and I don't want to say Cincinnati from last year, but if Urban was as bad as we thought and Peterson is as good as we think, that itself is worth 6 games. And if you can somehow at least go 4-2 in the division, there's no telling what can happen, man. I'm telling you, they may come out of the gate and win some games early because people don't know who they are. They don't have an identity yet.
Yeah, Tony, I know we're going to let you go, but I mean, if you're an up-and-coming team in the West, you're still going to be like, man, but I got to deal with Mahomes and Herbert for the next 12 years. Well, the other 3 teams in the South are going to be saying, damn, we got to deal with Lawrence for the next decade now.
You're absolutely right. And I could even argue that Doug Peterson is the best coach in the division. No disrespect to my man over in Tennessee, but the thing is I look for hardware, and he has it. And the way he got it, he beat Belichick and Brady. I mean, that's something that's big.
That's big.
And on the way there, he beat Sean Payton. So my thing is this guy has shown me, no matter the fact that he was jettisoned out of Philadelphia, didn't matter. He's shown me that when it mattered, he could do some things with Nick Foles and a backup quarterback in a city where they're starving for something to happen. And Jacksonville in certain ways, it's like Philadelphia. They want something to happen really, really bad here, and I think he's ready for it.
Love it. Yeah, he's already got that hardware, and he's got a better quarterback than he had when he won that hardware. I think he will at least have a better quarterback now starting in 2022 and beyond. Fantastic stuff. Find Tony Wiggins on Twitter at Shop Talking Wig. Find him every day on the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Wednesdays on the Locked On NFL podcast with our colleague James Rapine. Wig, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for jumping on with us today. Looking forward to watching those Jaguars here in 2022.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to be here. I appreciate it. You guys, man. People don't know what y'all mean to us here at Locked On NFL. I'll just leave it at that. You guys really, really set the template for us to do what we do, and I'm very appreciative and grateful.
Oh, I love it. Well, I want to bring on another segment if we're going to be talking like that. But,
bring it back tomorrow. Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. See you, man.
Thanks.
All right. I got to let the folks out there know before we finish up this pod, talk a little bit more about the Jags in that division and where Matt and I think they are at. But we got to tell the folks about BetOnline. I don't know, kind of getting excited. You get some great odds on the next AFC champion being the Jacksonville Jaguars. Are they that much of an upstart? Could it be? I want to talk a little bit about that coming up. But BetOnline, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball season all summer long into the playoffs. We've got the NBA 2022-2023 futures already coming up. And, of course, just a ton of stuff you can already bet on in the NFL. Sack numbers for Trevon Walker, passing yards for Trevor Lawrence, wins and losses, division winners, coaches of the year, coaches that will get fired first in the NFL. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your not only wagering, but sports scores and news this season. Boxing, celebrity boxing, MMA, golf, all of it, even Vegas casino games at BetOnline. So get over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, Matt. Fix my background here on the YouTube channel. There we go. We're back to the two shot, just Peacock and Williamson finishing it up. Look, when teams arrive, they arrive quickly. And when you look at the Jaguars roster, the defense could be good, like legitimately really good defense. If they're coached well and Trevor Lawrence takes that second year step, it's not unheard of. We saw Patrick Mahomes' second year leap looked like Lamar Jackson, right? That's the playoff recipe. If you got that legitimate quarterback and he's well coached, like Tony said, by a coach that's got hardware already, and you've got a legitimate defense, what are we talking about here? Is this the sleeper team in 2022 that not enough people are talking about, the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Well, sometimes you locked on hosts of specific teams get a little optimistic about your franchise. I wouldn't know anything about that. You know, and I don't go down that road with any team. But Tony had some tremendous points, I would have to say. I mean, building that front seven with size. I mean, just getting competent NFL pass catchers, not just wide receivers, but guys that have been around the block that understand route concepts and getting open in the little things. Sure, they overpaid for Christian Kirk and really overpaid for Zay Jones, but they're not going to be trotting Laquan Treadwell out there anymore. Who can't run any, you know, I mean, they got NFL guys. And the whole thing is just about Lawrence. And, well, there's two things. It's all about Lawrence, which if we were drafting quarterbacks, who do you want from now until the rest of their career? Lawrence would still be a top 5 pick for me. I mean, I'd take Burrow and Herbert and Mahomes and Allen over him still, but that might be it. I mean, that might be the end of the list, to be very honest with you, when you equate age into it. But the other thing is just changing the culture. I mean, when you're 5 and 50 or 15 and 55 over the last, 4 or 5 years, everyone in the building has to realize that that's not okay. You know, that this is not acceptable behavior. It starts with ownership. And I think Peterson's a real good start for it, but that's an uphill climb.
I thought Wig made a couple of really good points too about the offense, in that one, with Trevor Lawrence, the thing that really makes you excited, because you already knew what kind of a prospect he was. He was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. People are saying best prospect since Andrew Luck, right? And so the pedigree is there. You already know the talent level, and there were times when you saw the talent last year on the field as a rookie. But the way he held up in just a disaster of a season, a disaster of a situation where the team, the media, the franchise looked to him rather than the the grown man in Urban Meyer and your head coach to be the beacon of the franchise. And he held up against it, right? And came out the other side. And Wig made a good point. It'll never be that difficult. And he's seen an NFL season and he's got that under his belt. So I'm excited for it. And they are building, sort of a bully a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. And it's not just about Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. I like Marvin Jones. I think it's going to be more Christian Kirk and Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, that, veteran outside guy that, can make plays down the field. Christian Kirk's going to line up everywhere. Travis Etienne's going to line up everywhere. You've got multiple.
Maybe I'm crazy, but I still have hope for Laviska Shenault. And I always forget about him. I forget he even exists anymore.
A coaching staff that can be creative and utilize him a little bit more. Maybe he's not a superstar, but you can move him around and utilize him. You got ATN and Laviska Shenault in the field at the same time. You can move those guys around just about anywhere. A little positionless football, and then James Robinson is a legitimate, good starting NFL running back. So there's not that number one piece, but there's a lot of options. And I like that about this Jaguars offense. And there could be, some fun pieces there and they could create some points and the defense is going to give the ball back to them. So, the more I look at it, the more, I believe in this team if they got the coach and the quarterback right, which is what we always say. And I pound this home all the time. Coach and quarterback, the most important marriage you can have in an NFL franchise.
Yep.
And
they might have it.
The Jaguars might have it, and they got a pretty good defense to go with it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're putting things ahead of, I asked him what a successful season is. If I loved what Tony said about if we can all go to the stadium and not know the result, that would be wonderful.
Right? Yeah, a little suspense even before the game starts. That'd be fantastic.
If they can accomplish that and start to look like a winning organization, not just a football team, and still only win 5-6 games. But then they draft the best receiver in the draft or the second best receiver in the draft. And then you look at the offense and be like, well, Kirk's my 2. ATN was really good as a sidebar. Now we have a really good offense. There's a big picture building here,
Right. Yeah. You could at least go into 2023 thinking, man, the Jaguars are kind of one piece away from maybe making some noise and winning that division. And like I say, and I always say this is that when teams arrive, they arrive very quickly. Maybe they're a year away from that, but
Colts and Titans could crumble, right.
Yeah. And another great point you made about the defense is it's not just about, okay, we have size and we're going to, beat you up and beat you as beat up your quarterback and pass rush and get home and then cover on the back end. But you mentioned Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. And I didn't really think about that with the size aspect of because this division is a little old school, right? And the size aspect of that front seven for the Jaguars and who they have to face at running back every week. I didn't really put that together. That's a great point by you. And so kind of they're building themselves to beat the teams that they face twice a year.
And that has to be goal number one. How do we win the division? And then we'll go from there. I've told the story many times, but Phil Savage opened every one of our draft meetings the year I was with the Browns. How can we keep up with the Steelers? The Steelers were the team in the North at that point. How can we compete with the Steelers? And we looked at every draft meeting through that lens. That's a good start. How do I beat the guys that are ruling this division for the last couple of years?
I'm in. I'm all in. Let's go. Jacksonville Jaguars, the sleepers of the 2022 season. It's exciting.
I do think I'll take the over on their win total, though. Maybe Tony's just getting me excited, but I don't know.
I think that does tend to happen. You feel the enthusiasm from the hosts that talk about those teams every single day here on the network. And Tony does a fantastic job. And maybe he got me a little too excited, but the odds are good enough that might be a team you throw a little bit down on at BetOnline, right? Because there's some ingredients there, and it's amazing how quickly that changed for a team that was a laughing stock last year. Where it was like, what are they doing with this head coach? And you thought, man, their ownership's never going to get it right, and all of a sudden, oh, maybe they got coach and quarterback. Could be something here. Could be something. We'll see how it all comes together for those Jaguars in 2022. Thanks again to Tony Wiggins for jumping on the program with us. Again, find him at Shop Talking Wig on Twitter. And he's doing Wednesdays right here on the network on the Locked On NFL channel. Also, subscribe to Locked On NFL channel on YouTube to find the Peacock and Williamson show every day. We appreciate you. Always hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend. And Matt and I will be back Thursday with a little little live show, right? Thursday morning, Matt?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, Thursday, noon Eastern, and we'll do a live one. I like it.
Yeah, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. We'll get to your live chat questions, some of your Twitter questions as well, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.